So we're going to go through the lineups that I'm planning for game week 353 today. I think the big thing on my mind this week is rotation. Not just possible rotation for my own players, but also who my players are facing this week. Take Carlos Gil, for example. Sort of perceived wisdom and typically what you see is that MLS teams perform much better at home than they do away. But if we look at LAFC, they've had a sort of 6.5-hour trip there and back to play the CONCACAF Champions League in midweek. And that's just an insane amount of traveling in a really short period of time, which is likely to have an impact on fatigue. It's like, the time zone shift. There's a lot of factors coming into that I actually feel LAFC could be a little bit weaker this weekend. So, I'm thinking very, very much, not just, looking at predicted lineups, but thinking of that sort of second order effects of what's been happening in the past few weeks. What's likely to impact selection beyond them. Looking at what's likely to impact selection, because I think you look at predicted lineups. Big shout out to Sorare data because they've sort of started putting weighting on the accuracy of the selections from each manager. But I saw a lot of it, and you see it on Play Sharper as well. But people tend to just pick who started the last match. But when you have such fixture congestion, who started the last match is usually not the best indicator of who's going to start the next one. And I just think that there's been some, like, for some of my players, and this is sort of who I focus on, for some of my players, there's been an insane fixture build-up in recent weeks. Yari Visharin, Enzo Fernandez, on paper, they have really good fixtures this weekend. And, if you look at their pick score on Sorare data, it's good because they are high-scoring players. They've got good matchups. Like, all of the fundamentals are there. The sort of data point that's not factored in is fatigue. And, Enzo's score in midweek was a little bit flat. Yari's scores in the last two games have been, lower than what he'd usually put out. And I think a big part of that is just the insane fixture congestion. So I've actually, when putting my lineups together this week, I've really prioritized that. And, I've taken some big names with, potentially good fixtures out of my lineups because of that. So anyway, without further ado, let's get into them. What am I prioritizing this week? Well, for me, my goal is to win some super rares this week. I am going super rare hunting, and if I'm lucky, maybe some uniques. So let's see. I had a really good week last week. Pulled in some great rewards, some of whom have literally gone straight into my lineups for this week. So, I'm really excited about that, and hoping to keep the good times rolling with the team selections this weekend. So here we go. First up, and I'm quite excited about this one. My Cap 270. I've had a look as Sorare have redone the pools this week. Jose Paradella, who's quickly becoming one of my favorite players in America, is unique, is in the pool. If I can win Cap 270 Super Rare, I've got a shot at winning a unique Paradella, which would be very, very exciting. But for me, I sort of have a love-hate relationship with 270 because of how OP the captain bonus is. So I only really tend to dip into this when I think that my captain has potential to go really big. And if we look at, who we got this week, who am I looking at? It's Enzo Lefebvre, and, he is playing Troyes at home. Like, that is such an incredible fixture for him. And I'm really excited about what he can do. I don't often prioritize this, but, Argentinos Juniors, they're just so good at the moment. They've got a home fixture, which is incredibly favourable. I sort of back them to keep a clean sheet. Enzo, his AA, I mean, he went 70 plus last week with AA alone without a decisive. I feel like he's due a decisive, and this week one could come. If he can go 80, 90 plus points, I've got it in the mix for something good here. Andy Polo, I'm feeling more reassured now about coverage in Peru because they had coverage last week. And Polo is a player that can grab a decisive. He's someone that can outscore that L15. And last but not least is Paradella. He's benefiting from a new manager at River. He had a bunch of sub appearances last year. Those are really like weighing down on his L5. So even though he's been on a really, really good run of form, and if you sort of look at the difference between his L5 and his L15, I might have to scroll down a little bit to find him. Where is he? Let's just actually, let's use the features that we have available to us. Jose Paradella. So his L5 is 55 points, and we're getting a 41 point cap hit on his L15. Like that's massive. Like he's been just an absolute cheat code for me in the capped modes recently. So I'm excited to roll him out again this week against a team at home that you really would back him to score well in. I'm also looking at Cap 270 Rare as well. So this is where one of the new players comes in, the new player being Yamar, who I won as a T1 in Champ America Rare Pro last week. If we roll through this, Nardi's got a really good fixture. I'm really not sure why he's an F, because he is the starter in the league for Ghent. They're playing against Zulta, who've really not been great. So I think Nardi can put in a good score. Yamar is just an absolute duel winning, like extraordinaire. Like he wins so many duels. He's, from a Sorare perspective, he's by far and away the best defender in MLS in terms of consistent scoring. I think Wagner outdoes him for peaks, but Yamar is just like constantly in that 60-point range. Home, away, home he gets clean sheets, away he tends to win more duels. So I've got no problem playing him against Cincy, even though that's on paper a slightly more difficult fixture than what they sort of had last week at home. Juan Quintero, he has been creating chances for fun this season, but none of his teammates have been putting them away. He is really, really overdue a decisive, and I'm hoping that that's this weekend at home against a weaker side. So I'm quite excited about that. I've got Reese, who is my sort of ace up the sleeve in Korea. He was in K2. He's returned to K1. He made his debut last week, banged out an 80-plus point score. He's on all sets. He looks really dangerous. He scored a great goal last week. So I'm really, really excited about him. And also Albert Gudmonsen as well, who's got a really, really good fixture. Like he was actually one of the sort of halfway through last game week, I was really not feeling very good about my chances. But, Gudmonsen came through, won me a T1 in Cap 270 Rare last week, just because he had such an incredible captain's performance. So I'm really, really excited about this one. And I think for me, what's really weighing on my mind is how competitive Gas region is going to be this week. Last week I went for 388 points in Global AllStar Rare Pro and did not win a thing. I sort of called it out on the video last week because I was a little bit concerned about how high it could be. And if we look this week, chances are it could be even higher. Not only have we got teams in Europe that have got amazing fixtures, all the top teams in Argentina have got really good fixtures. There's just a lot of very, very popular teams that have got very good fixtures this week. And I just think that we could be seeing, maybe in AllStar Rare Pro, you need to be 395, 396 plus. We're going to be getting right up near that 400 point mark. I will still compete there, but what was on my mind is if I have players that I think are worthy captains, then actually going in 270, particularly considering my decision to go for the 2 Cap 270 Rare super rare this week and sort of pull some of my stronger super rare cards there. I have to be quite smart with how I play my rares. Like, there's always trade-offs, right? Even a gallery of my size, I can't be going strong everywhere. I've got to think about balance. I've got to think about, okay, well, what are my goals for the week? How can I put out strong teams? For me, it's not about putting out as many teams as possible. It's about using the assets well to form the strongest teams I possibly can. Last week, sort of even with the disappointing of Becca Status killing my on paper strongest lineup with a really late scratch, I still came away with 3 tier 1s, 1 tier 2 rare, which is a great, no bonus about it. It's a great week for me. And I think what I'm trying to do is continue doing this. I'm always trying to look at, how do I continually evolve my lineups? What is, where am I playing my cards this week? What lineup, what division gives me the best chance of winning? And that there's an element of fluidity to that each week as I sort of look at the fixtures and I look at fixtures of my teams and fixtures of other teams as well. So on the topic of that, AllStar Rare Pro, what am I gonna go with? Well, this is quite a fun one. Some of you may look at this and go, what the fuck? Who on earth is Philip Romans, and why are you putting him in a lineup with, in what is normally your most prioritized division? Well, Romans, despite his price, is actually a really good scorer. I've been sitting on his super rare for a while. He actually had an injury, and I'll be honest, I didn't realize he was back until I had a look at the old pick scores this week, and I was like, why is he rated so highly? I thought he was injured. Well, he's not injured, and this weekend he has a really nice fixture at home against Valvik. He takes all sets. He's a defensive midfielder that takes all sets for go-ahead, so he tends to get AA on both sides of the balls. He's winning duels, he's winning tackles, he's getting key passes, he's getting penalty area entries. So, to give context, Go Ahead conceded 4 goals away from home last week, and he still ended up with an 18-point AA score. So he's a really, really solid scorer. And my sort of initial lineup here had Yari Vasharin in, and then my sort of context around Vasharin looking quite tired was that, okay, well, do I risk Vasharin, who, with Anderlecht, Villarreal poised quite evenly at 1-1, where do Anderlecht prioritize? Because at the moment, they're not looking like they're getting into the playoff 2 in Belgium. So then, in theory, their best chance of getting back into Europe is to go and win the Conference League. I'm not sure they're capable of that. But they are poised 1-1 up with Villarreal. I don't know how Rima's going to play it, but there is that risk of rotation. There's that risk of fatigue impacting performance. And I just said, okay, well, let's go with players that I believe to be fit. Let's go with players that I think can have an impact. Like Romans is the kind of player that goes 75, 80 plus if he gets a decisive. And I think he's much better at home than he is away. I just feel like this week is a good spot to drop him in, even though you might think I've got better options. I think it's just fixture wise he looks great, and it allows me to play my other options like Enzo Lefebvre in that cap 270 super rare, which I really, really want to prioritize this week, because I think my gallery could really, really benefit. Like if I can go and win a tier 1 super rare in cap mode, then that's going to really, really strengthen my AllStar Red Pro sides going forward. So that's the sort of logic for me, is like, how do I build my gallery using the assets that I currently have? Zelarayan, again, we've got this sort of home away debate on MLS. This is probably the riskiest pick in here because he is away, but he looked great last week, and ultimately Toronto are not Philadelphia. Fairly obvious statement alert, but Toronto's defense is trash. They've been looking awful, and I sort of back Zella to grab a decisive here, even if they are away. At the back, Herve Kofi, who is going for 5 straight clean sheets. Coffee Goat has been churning prizes for me in recent weeks, and I absolutely love it. There's been some ongoing debate in the JPL channel in Sorare Discord around Kofi. I tipped him as a great player for capped many months ago when Mazu came back, was basically berated in that channel by some who were like, oh no, he's trash. Well, lo and behold, the guy's on absolute fire, and Charleroi are looking really, really solid defensively. So I'm really happy with that pick. This week they are at home. They're facing Leuven. I actually think they could go another clean sheet. I really do. This is sort of like a wild card team, but it's got good upside. It really does. Like, it might not be the most well-known of players in here, but it's got some real upside and potential to do really well. And then Edson Alvarez, the defender card, it's great. Playing Herenveen, even though it's away, it's a good fixture for them. I'm quite excited to see what he does there. Next up, and I've sort of prioritized this one a little bit more, is my Champ America Rare Pro. So again, much like AllStar Rare Pro, there's a little bit, risk on the captain selection because he is away from home. But based on that comments earlier about LAFC's travel time this week, I really think that Gil is still a good shout. Even without a DA in his first 2 games, he's been putting up good AA. So he's got upside of 80 plus if he can grab a decisive this week, and I think that there's a good chance of him doing so. I'm not sure how this game goes. I think both sides have been in decent attacking form. But I really do hope that Gil can grab his first decisive of the season. Who else have we got in here? Well, we've got Racing Defensive Stack, who ultimately let us all down last week, but this week they're at home. I'd like to see a bit of a reaction from them. I think clean sheet there's a possibility. Then got Juan Quintero again. He was in the Cap 270 rare. I've got him super rare in America Rare Pro, and Maximiliano Romero, who is at Racing. There was some questions over his fitness, but this morning it has been confirmed that he is available to play. So I'm feeling reasonably confident about him. Again, this is a compromise. This is a trade-off. Ideally, I would be playing Mamana. I would be playing Armani, but unfortunately, Mamana is still not available. And with that decision to prioritize Cap 270 Super Rare, I have to make compromises, and I feel that this is a acceptable level of compromise to have. While I've still got, Quintero could grab an assist, Romero could grab a goal, and suddenly I'm in the mix for a prize. That's sort of where we are this week. Like, it's not a complete throwaway. It's maybe not my strongest team on paper, but it is. It has potential. It has potential to challenge. I genuinely believe that. Next up, what do we got? We've got AllStar Rare is the one that I'm sort of looking at next, which is up here. This is kind of what it would have been the core of my America Rare Pro side should Mamana have been available. But what I've done is I've pulled that into AllStar Rare. I've pulled in Nico Otamendi just because he's got such a great fixture. And again, he put up a really big score for me last week, so I'm hoping he can put up another one this week. I've then got Cecilia and I've got Faith Salamani, 2 really strong forwards with all-round potential. So this is if all goes well on this could be, I'd like to see this as potentially a side that could challenge for ETH prizes in Rare. I really do. I sort of had a crack last week. Baccastatus killed that, followed by Racing, flunking on the old clean sheet, which, actually just didn't really matter. I'm going to have another go. I'm going to keep on targeting that ETH in AllStar because there's just so much value in grabbing that ETH at the moment. Another area that I am looking at ETH is in Cap 240 Super Rare. So what I've got here is I've actually made one new signing this week. I used the ETH that I won in Cap 240 Super Rare last week to buy Dave Bullfuss, who plays in Korea for Samsung Suwon Blue Wings. He's fairly consistent. He's a player that he's capable of 50s, he's capable of 60s. His L15 is dragged down a little bit at the moment because he gave away 2 penalties, the last one, which was really, really unfortunate. But it does mean that his L15 is much lower than you would expect it to be, and it gives me a sort of run of a couple of weeks where I can use him. He cost me 0.11, so realistically, if that can help me hit 2 thresholds, he's paid for himself, and I really didn't have many other options. So it was time that I sort of came in and grabbed another super rare depth piece here that can sort of rotate in and out. Kofi already talked much about him. Quite confident in him this week. Higuchi and Pitanya. Higuchi and Pitanya were so unlucky last week. Like I hit cap 240 threshold. I had Higuchi had an assist ruled off for offside. Pitanya had an assist taken away by Opta. Like I could have been 70 odd points up on where I was last week, which would have really put me in the mix for a really good prize. But both of these players are playing well. They've got a cap score that is really quite appropriate for this competition. And unfortunately, they just need a little bit of luck. They've got good fixtures again this weekend, so I'm really, really hoping that at least one of those can grab a decisive, and we can sort of push not only for threshold but also into the card prizes as well. Last but not least is Jun Amano. This might require a very, very late change because he did get subbed early last match. I'm really trying to keep an eye on his availability. Shout out to Ross and K-League English Discord because he's sort of really good with injury news on the K-League players. But at this moment in time, I would like to play him. We will have to wait and see. It might require a very, very late switch out, but I'll sort of keep an eye on it right up to the deadline because he's got a wonderful fixture, and he's another one of these players that was a sub for a lot of last season. He's now not a sub, and he's scoring. He's got 2 decisives in his opening 2 games. Like, he's really, really in good form. And at home to Guangzhou this weekend is a top fixture. Like, he could get 80 plus if he starts genuinely. So I just really, really want him to be fit, willing it into existence. Come on, Jim. Come on. Last 2 I'll sort of go through, and then we'll wrap it up. Is under 23 rare. So this. Again, like Yari Basharan and Enzo Fernandez are some of my top under 23s. I think sometimes we can be guilty when selecting as managers to just go with, they've got a great L15. They'll be really, let's get them in there. Like, they're my most expensive players. Like, they've delivered a lot of success for me in the past. But being really critical, that sort of fatigue aspect does really weigh onto my mind. And, if we look at it here, I've been able, by taking a step back and looking at who else do I have, they're not as sexy names, they're not as popular names, but bringing in Alexander Alvarado, who's playing a newly promoted side in Ecuador, Colidao, who has been really, really good in Argentina this season. I feel that I'm stronger by playing matchups and perceived availability rather than putting my quote-unquote strongest players in. It's a difficult decision to drop Enzo, particularly against Leicester, because it is a good fixture. But he's just been playing for so long. The guy's played for so long without a break now. It's actually insane. Like, he's gone like full season at River, Benfica, World Cup, now Chelsea. Like, he's not stopped playing in like 18 months. And we saw what happened with Pedri, with overload of Pedri, like not stopping playing in 18 months, and you end up getting like muscular issues. Like, Enzo's going to need a rest at one point, sooner or later, whether that's a planned rest or an enforced rest through injury. Like, the guy's just had so much to deal with from a physical perspective over the last 18 months. So I've just decided to, I suppose, play it safer. I don't even know if it is playing it safer. It's sort of, it's considering, in my mind, data points that aren't immediately visible to us as managers. Like, we have a lot of data available, but sometimes you have to sort of take that data and augment it with, sort of understanding of the game, watching the game. Like, Enzo looked tired against Dortmund in midweek. He didn't score, great on Sorare. Like, that's what is trending. That's sort of what I'm thinking about here, is like, how are their scores trending? And for me, the scores of Enzo and Yari have been trending downwards. So for me, until I sort of have more reassurances on how fit they currently are and how that's going to impact their scoring, I'm just going to sort of, look at prioritizing other players. Last but not least, we have my Champion American Rare team. What am I rolling with? Well, New York Red Bulls have been looking pretty solid this season. They lost narrowly 1-0 to Orlando. They then shut out Nashville at home. This week they're playing Minnesota, who look fairly toothless in attack, to be honest. So again, although they are away from home, I have a feeling that this could be a really low-scoring game. So I've run Coronel, I've run Tolkien. This is a defensive stack that I really like. I think it's going to do well for me this season in the right spots. I've also pulled in Frankie Amaya. He's playing in a double pivot with Christian Cáceres Jr. They're both pretty good on AA. So, I feel that that's sort of like probably the one of most consistent scorers. Like in an ideal world, I would have played Ignacio Fernandez here. I would have played Bakastetas in that spot in global. But with Bakastetas injured, I've had to make some adjustments, and Amaya feels like the best option for me. Like Pomcal would have been a really good option if I thought he was fit because he's playing the Whitecaps, but he came off injured in the last match as well, so I'm really unsure of that. Where I am quite excited is the forward pairing. Juan Brunetta, Savarino, again, both forwards with decisive potential and a solid AA game. Savarino is at home against Austin this weekend, and Austin's defending has been absolutely abysmal. It has been so bad, like absolute trash. Like I really am thinking that Savarino can cause some damage this weekend. Again, Brunetta could also cause some damage at home against Tijuana. So I'm really looking here, clean sheet for Red Bulls, middle of the road AA performance from Maya, and then absolute smashes from the two forwards, and that should put me in the mix for the prizes. So yeah, that's where we are. That's where my head's at. Really hoping. I had a really good week last week. Hoping to continue that. Hoping to add a super rare prize to the mix come end of the game week. So yeah, looking forward to it. And thank you ever so much for tuning in.